Anyway, I apologize for that. You got to see me move around a bunch, but didn't hear any words. Thank you, Darlene, for letting me know. When I was a kid, we played a game, lots of games outside, and these games were hide and go seek, and we would play freeze tag, and all kinds of chase games, and games that were intended that there was a villain and there were captives. When I came to this church, we played Fox Across the River. Anyway, all of those things had something in common. They had a home base, or a place that was safety, and we would rush to there. We would look for every opportunity to get to there, which reminds me of today's verse of the day. Today's verse of the day is found in Psalms 18, or the 18th Psalm. And this was written by a guy named David. David, as you'll remember, was the guy who killed Goliath. David was a great musician. He was a little shepherd boy that God called out of the field and into a kingdom. And he was going to replace Saul. And Saul was very jealous of David, and so he began to pursue David. His idea was he was going to kill David. He didn't want David to replace him as king. And so David wrote this psalm after, he says, the Lord had delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. And here's the first words of the song that he wrote. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord, my strength. And so one of the things David recognizes is that he got all of his power and his strength from God. And he goes on to say, the Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. In other words, David is declaring that God was the place that he ran to. God, he uses lots of really awesome terminology here. And the first word he uses is, he is my rock. And I've heard this phrase used a lot of times by a lot of people. I've heard people declare that one of their parents was their rock. I've heard people declare that their partner was their rock. I've even heard parents say that their children are their rock. And what everybody means when they say that is their rock, it means that's their foundation. That's the place they go that they know is immovable. They know that person will always be there. That person will never, ever leave them or forsake them. That person will always give them the encouragement they need to go forward. And so David sees this of God. I'm going to be honest with you. We have a tendency to call people rocks and foundations when really what we need isn't the immovable rock of God. We need to be able to run to him in our times of trouble. But he goes on, he's not just the rock, he's not just the foundation, he's also my fortress. In other words, he's the place I run to for stability. He's also the place I run to for protection. He's my fortress and my deliverer. He's my home base. He's my safety. But he's not done. He says, my God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. You know, I'm willing to bet that if you think about it right now, when you're in the most trouble, when you're in the biggest issue in your life, there is somewhere you go. There's someone you call on. There's somewhere you feel the safest. Maybe it's in your home. Maybe it's with your spouse. Maybe it's with a friend. I don't know. But there's somewhere that you run to. David ran to God. David saw God as his refuge. David saw God as his strength. David saw God as his fortress and his rock. And we have a tendency, I think, to really do that with people, and when we need to be running to God. And I'm telling you, God is there. He is our deliverer. David does the best job here of defining where he had to go. Here's the crazy thing. When David was running from Saul, he didn't have a lot of places to go. He didn't have a lot of people to run to. And so he was forced to rely on God. And the end result of being forced to rely on God was he found his rock and his fortress. He found his shield and his hiding place. He found the horn of his salvation and his stronghold. listen to the rest of this because I like to give you context. Taking one verse out of text is usually not a good idea. He goes on in this song and he says, I called to the Lord who is worthy of praise, and I have been saved from my enemies. The cords of death entangled me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called to the Lord. I cried to my God for help. From his temple, he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. And I'm going to end with this. I'm going to tell you that though at times it doesn't seem like God is hearing your cries, he certainly is. And though at times it doesn't seem like he's bringing about deliverance, he certainly is. And though at times it seems like he's given you more than you could possibly ever overcome, he will guide you through it. He is your rock. He is the horn of your salvation. He is your refuge. And in your distress, he ought to be the first, not the last, we call upon. Anyway, sorry about the sound at the beginning of this. I hope you made it through that silence of me moving my mouth and made it to the end of this. But I hope you enjoy today. Today's Tuesday. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. This has been another edition of Coffee and the Word. God bless.